Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
And welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth, a weekly live radio broadcast here on KUNX Digital Broadcasting. And today, my guest is an old friend I ran into and reconnected with in Palm Springs, beautiful Palm Springs, California, late this spring at Contact in the Desert, a legendary UFO gathering and other paranormal subjects, and rightly so. And it's a pleasure to have him on the show tonight. Dean Alioto is an award-winning filmmaker and UFO researcher who has produced numerous specials for A&E, Bravo, and Discovery, as well as consulted on the brilliant James Fox UFO documentary, The Phenomenon. He is the creator of the cult hit alien abduction movie, The McPherson Tape, and the enigmatic UPN TV movie, Alien Abduction Incident in Lake County. Dean recently completed an 8-year-long filmmaking journey spanning 4 countries, where he conducted more than 60 interviews for his new Amazon documentaries, The Alien Perspective and Life Beyond Earth. And Dean Alioto, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yep, there we go. Now you can see me. So you can dub in anything because the audience couldn't see me. You could have seen me say, you're going to dub in me saying, "Oh my God, Peter, I am so happy to be here." But it's true. I am happy to be here.
Me and you both. I have a quick question for you first. This past late spring was my first attending of Contact in the Desert, and I had heard a lot about it, but I really wasn't quite prepared for the sweep and of the thing and the variety and the number of people that attended. Was this your first one as well, or are you a veteran of this event?
No, it was my first one. I'd heard that Captain Ron, who runs it, is a major jerk. And so I waited decades, I want to say, probably since the 60s, 1960s, I want to say. And then finally, it was all proven untrue. No, I had talked to Captain Ron before I had actually gone there, and he is great. Love him. Funny as hell. He's a card-carrying smartass like me, so we got along great. And yeah, he saw the films and said, "Hey, you're coming out. We're going to get you in," because I was kind of a late addition, and took care of us. Yeah, nothing but great. You know, it's basically summer camp or summer camp for UFO. You know, the UFO luminaries and paranormal and the whole community. So it's a great hang.
It is. And I was particularly impressed that they run it as a nonprofit, staffed by, more than 100 incredibly well-trained volunteers. So, yes, looking forward to being part of that at some point in the future again. Let's begin at the beginning, my friend. You are a native Los Angelian?
From San Francisco originally. That's my last name. If people are old enough, they'll remember Alioto. There was a mayor there in the 60s and 70s. No relation. I mean, maybe we're the poor relation, but nothing. Right. We're not in anyone's will.
Like me and Marty Robbins and Tony Robbins.
Yes, exactly.
Can you tell us a bit about your growing up and your family and the things that first, kind of stuck in your mind as a beginning human being on Earth?
Sure. Well, I came into being fully formed, and it was a miracle.
With glasses.
Jesus, but nothing compares. Yeah, I'm the product of divorced parents. I like to say. When my parents split up, I was around 7 years old, and I thought it was a great idea for me to be raised by my father, and then my older brother and younger brother, all 2 years apart, they were raised in the Bay Area by my mother.
Wow.
And I was a crazy kid, hyperactive. And so I went, unfortunately, on Ritalin. And what that does is, especially, I was on 2 or 3 times the normal dosage of that. And so what that does is it basically is like being on Quaaludes the whole day. You're just numb. You're not eating. In fact, as a kid, you kind of lose height until you get off it. And so at night, it wears off and you can't sleep. So I would spend my times either watching the Jerry Lewis telethon, muscular dystrophy telethon, or movies. It wasn't like, today where it's a la carte. You grab whatever movie you want. I watch whatever it was. So I'm seeing films that are, From Here to Eternity, like in The Chocolate Factory, mixed in with, film noir, Sam Fuller, a whole range of films. But the other time, I'm looking out my apartment window at stars. And I'm looking at that for inspiration. And for some reason, I'm thinking that each of these sparkling little lights in the sky are like little souls. And that somewhere out there, there is someone who's going through what I'm going through exactly. And so I'm not alone. And so it gave me great comfort. And so when, Spielberg's Close Encounters came, We Are Not Alone, it was like, yeah, I know. So that was kind of what sparked my imagination, I would say, was that. And then In Search of, the usual gateway drug. And Twilight Zone series and The Outer Limits and all that stuff. Yeah. Reruns, but still.
Yeah. Did you have an interest in the UFO subject at all before seeing Close Encounters, a film that had such a tremendous impact on more than a generation?
I did. I used to go into bookstores and I would just curl up in the section that had UFOs, whether it was Chariots of the Gods, or it was a book about the Bermuda Triangle, certainly Bigfoot. In fact, as a kid, I remember I wanted to be a journalist at some point, but the type of journalism I wanted to do was paranormal. And
right.
So I'm going from neighbor to neighbor saying, hey, have you seen Bigfoot? Do you have any sightings? And I come across this one guy, this is true. And he says, yeah, I used to live in Oregon. We used to hear all about that. And I wasn't sure about it. And then so my buddy and I, we made these boots that looked like chicken feet, except they were super big. And we went out in the snow and we walked all around. And sure enough, the news came back. There's some big chicken that's going around, haunting the woods. Based on the foot size, he's probably 7 feet, 8 feet tall. And so he said, yeah, that's my only experience with Bigfoot. But yeah, I was into all of that. And then seeing In Search of. And the original host, by the way, was Rod Serling, who passed away before it became. But Leonard Nimoy crushed it. So yeah, I mean, that was really it. I couldn't wait to see In Search of. For some reason, I just knew that the life that I was in was not the totality of what reality is.
You remind me, Unsolved Mysteries was the first big show that I had a chance to appear on for a matter of seconds, but it was an early and I thought rather courageous and well done episode on alien abduction phenomena with Bud Hopkins. And for part of it, I was sitting in his living room and, talking for a little cinema verite moment. What really excited me on that night, that of course it was scheduled and, it's in TV Guide and it's a very big deal. And I watched it with my parents, which was great fun, was not so much being on the show, but the narrator was Robert Stack. There is Elliot Ness's voice. And I'm on camera. It's one of those moments you never forget. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah, well, he wins the award for the stiffest host on TV ever. He would come in with that. It was, I don't know if they grabbed it from
Jack Webb,
Bogart's, raincoat, the old trench coat. but he would come out and he would talk, tonight, 1983, we have a story for you. Really, it was great. It gave great importance to whatever he was saying. He could be talking about, flying pigs tonight on Unsolved Mysteries. And you go, oh, we're going to see flying pigs. Okay, sure. Yeah, he was
It's a
great.
wonderful thing that actors like that had a chance to show their comic chops. And in his case, his golden moment for me was in Airplane, especially at the beginning in the airport where, Hare Krishna, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah. That was great.
You can't do that anymore. It's a shame. But
no, you cannot punch Hare Krishna. It's not good.
By the time you're in high school, were you at that point thinking of journalism as a way to go, or another strong subject leaning into that maybe you thought, I need to be on the safe side and, get a career together so I can do what I want to do?
Well, I would say kind of bridging elementary. I went through a whole, there was a, what was it? Rocky and Bullwinkle series. And there was Captain, and it was Mr. Wizard or something. And it was this young guy who would say to this wizard, and every episode he would say, I want to be a fireman. And it's like, you're just a kid. Are you sure? Yeah, I want to be a fireman. So it'd be a fireman, and we get all jacked up, and he would come crying back to Mr. Wizard, take me back. So I went through a whole litany of professions. The first thing I wanted to do was be an actor. And then I wanted to be a magician. I was an escape artist. Harry Houdini was my god. And then I wanted to be a stuntman. And so we shot these stunt films. My buddy broke his arm. But, we're kids. We heal fast. And then I saw Star Wars. And then that was it. And that would have been junior high. And I remember going, I don't understand. This is the simplest story in the world. Rescue princess, bring her back, kill Death Star. Hope I didn't give any spoilers away to someone who hasn't seen it, but that's on you. If you haven't, come on. And so it was simple, but I had to see the movie 4 times, like in one day, because the visuals were so amazing. The whole design of it and the characters were so amazing. Take it all in. My, dyslexia was just kind of like the right side of the brain was just going. So I by the time I got to high school, I was thinking still I might act, but I didn't have the actor's temperament. I literally, whenever I'd go into a casting at school for a play or whatever, I would always say that person is better. That person should be doing my part. He looks the part of my brain. But how are they going to do the tornado on stage? That's interesting to me. So I was more interested in the mechanics always. And so that was it. I wanted to be a filmmaker. So in high school, Spielberg was my god. When I saw E.T., I had actually dropped out of high school because I was a very impatient person. I was about to flunk out. And my junior year, my mother, to her credit, said, I know you'll be fine. I will trust it, but you got to get a job right now. Yeah, I got to get a job and read the newspaper every day. And so shout out to my mom, Tracy. And so I saw E.T., and I had been dropped out of school for like 6 months, and I saw E.T. and I went, wow, I'm Elliot. I'm the messed up middle child. My mother is raising, 3 kids on her own. And instead of it being this, tragedy, this, drama, it was this magical epic. And so it took all those things inside of me and it married them with the magical. And I came home and I said, I'm a filmmaker. And from that moment on, since 1982, that was it. There was nothing, holding me back. And so that was kind of the thing was like, this is how I need to voice my inner, creativity. So
did you start with an 8 or a Super 8 millimeter camera, like so many of the giants actually did, as we know now, including Spielberg? Or were you already in videotape land?
No, we were in Super 8. Videotape came a few years after that. So my first few films were Super 8. I would say, I went back to school and I got into the film program at San Francisco State University. Still didn't know I was dyslexic. So after the first semester, I had to drop out because the syllabus that I had for reading in English, even though I was an avid reader, was like, stack of books. And I could have gotten them on tape or something, but I didn't know. And so I dropped out and I went, all right, I'm going to take a year off, save up enough money and go to USC, University of Southern California, the premier cinema school. And so I did that. And for a semester, I took classes there, and then video started to come in. And so I shot some videos, and that was kind of the whole preamble.
Have you, on your own, written the scripts and produced them, or did you have a friend or friends that you were working with at that time?
I was writing since I was a teenager. I had been writing into my early 20s, short stories in screenplay format. So, and all of them were Twilight Zone knockoffs. There were all these fun little stories that were anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. In fact, the first script I wrote was a collection of those that I had sent out to New Line Cinema, and almost got some interest there to get it going. So that was my first experience writing. I didn't really produce for anyone. I've done that since then, but it was mostly just writing. And the only reason why I wrote was I needed something to film as a director. And it turns out that I love writing just as much as directing, and I've written much more than I've directed, because, as you know, directing a movie takes 1 to 2 years to get it going if you're moving quick. So.
Can you give us an idea of the plot of one of your early films and how it ended, if you don't mind revealing the ending?
No, not at all. The first short film I made was called A Little Change. And it was these two women. It starts out following these two women griping about how technology is coming so fast they can't keep up with it. And they're at this department store and they're in line. And this guy goes to race out the door. And he's got a whole bunch of clothes and stuff in his hands. And he gets to the door and the door locks. Just by the cashier pressing a button, boom, the door locks. And he turns around and he pulls out a knife and says, open these damn doors or I'm going to cut somebody. And then he takes his little wand scanner and he turns around and he fires it at the guy. He evaporates and the clothes drop. And then he turns back and he goes, here's your change. Thank you, ma'am, to the two women. So it was a fun little, that type of stuff. That was the tone that I was doing. That was my first video short.
When you submitted those stories, did you receive an actual letter back in the mail?
Yeah. So the script, I didn't send them out until the script was done. Here's a lesson for you. If you send a script, and it was called Tales from Beyond, and I had artwork done, and at the beginning of every short story or short script, because it was an anthology, horror, sci-fi, fantasy anthology, I had a storyboard done. Really nice production value. My buddy Bill Bose, who I would go on to work on my other stuff, did it. And so I gave it to a script supervisor that I was working with at the time, because I'd work on commercials as a PA and films, features when they come to town. And I gave it to her to read. And she goes like, I really don't know this genre, but I'll look at it if you want, And so she looked at it, gave it back to me, and then told me that, she liked it, but wasn't her thing. It wasn't sure this or that. And I said, well, thanks for reading it. So I send it to New Line Cinema. I get a contact there. They read it and it gets bumped up a couple. And they say, it's still, we'll get back to you, but it's gone on to, the head of development. I'm like, great. It finally comes back to me and I see the letter. That was back when you would get the script, and the letter has these notes on it. And I go, oh, well, that sucks. That's too bad. And then I'm looking at the script that I just got back, and this paper falls out. And I pick it up, I look at it, and the script supervisor had only told me over the phone her notes, but she wrote it down and stuck it in the back of the script. And so the rejection letter that I got was almost verbatim. And so I don't know how that all, the karma that goes into that, but evidently not my time. So anyway, yeah, that's how that played out.
I ask in part only because now for years, basically, as people develop creative projects, interact with major players in the entertainment business, it's literally all electronic. And there is something about rejection letters or letters of encouragement or advanced reviews or whatever that you can't explain to somebody who has grown up in this analog world.
Yeah.
The extra meaning that it has. I'm sometimes wistful thinking that, there is no future where, with rare exceptions, where a double-spaced script that was typed out electronically or manually with changes written in different colored inks, etc., they simply won't exist as artifacts of the creative process, which, is not a terrible thing, but wistful.
No, well, I'll tell you one more thing that we lost because of that. I wrote this teenage superhero script, really, really fun project that I hope to do someday. And I sent it off to ICM and through a buddy of mine who was repped there, because you always have to have, contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And came back and they said, thanks for the look, just not our thing, blah, 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 no problem. I look at the script, which you sent me back, and I can tell it's not been read. You can tell because it's like you can still hear it. Yeah. So that it's not been, open, none of the pages. And so I was pissed off. So I called them back and I said, hey, got the thing. And the guy said, yeah, sorry. And we go, no problem. UTA, which was another big agency. I said, they're interested in the project. And so I'm kicking it out to them. But thank you anyway. I really appreciate that. Hopefully we can find something in the future. Hang up. 5 minutes later, hey, Dean, this is Nick. Do you mind sending us that script back? So I sent it back to them, and all of a sudden they're interested. And the punchline to that one was the week before they were going to go out to get a bidding war at Warner Brothers 20th Century, and I forgot who the third one was. Spielberg announced that he was doing Plastic Man, and my superhero character was Elastic.
Oh.
And no one wanted to compete with Spielberg. So I missed it by like 1 or 2 weeks. And so that was it. That was my 5 minutes of fame at ICM.
At a certain point, you made contact with somebody somewhere and had your first opportunity to work with them or them with you on a project of theirs or a project of yours. What was that first professional project you were involved in, and in what capacity, Dean?
So I was almost 25 and had to make my first film by that age because all my filmmaking idols had done that. And so, not that it really signifies anything, but it's a good, target to put on the wall. And so I only had, a buddy of mine had $6,500, and he said, hey, I'll finance your first film. And I said, well, that's a budget for a short film, because back then they didn't have DSLR cameras. It was either 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter. And so at first I kind of, passed on it, and I was shooting wedding videos with a buddy of mine. And then I read Whitley Strieber's book, and it knocked me on my ass. It was more terrifying than any Stephen King novel I had ever read. Yeah. And I went, how do I inject this into the audience in a way that's so visceral that they feel like they're there? And so I thought, what if it's happening to a cameraman? And what if I take the Spielbergian family setting and have it take place there? And so that's how I came up with the idea. The original title was called UFO Abduction. And then later on became the McPherson tape. And so I called back up my buddy Joey, and I said, hey, all right, let's do it. We're going to shoot it as a home video. And so this is 1989. And so we shot this thing basically in one night. And and it's all around, a family's little girl's 5-year-old birthday party in a house in the woods. And, everything goes nuts, and it's all recorded on this home video camera.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, it just got weirder from there.
Have you ever had what we would call a UFO experience or a paranormal experience that is distinguished enough that it still resonates with you, or that is just part of your memory bank?
This is what I feel like. I feel like, the DMV, you've got all these lines, and you get in one line and you're like, oh, this one's moving faster. And you get in that one, then it goes. So I feel like I'm in line to have a really great UFO experience, but maybe I keep getting in the wrong line because I still haven't had it. And, working on these documentaries, a very good friend of mine is Ivana Smith, and Yvonne says to me, because I said to her, I go, I've been working on this for, at the time, I think it was like 5 years. And this project, the current one, it was, documentary supposed to be done in 9 months, because I've done those for Bravo and A&E, et cetera. And I thought I'll shoot it, wrap it up in 9 months, do 15 interviews, and I'll be done. This is 2018. And it just goes on and on. And finally I said to her, I go, I don't know what the hell's going on. Why am I still doing this? I don't get it. And I'm not an experiencer that I'm aware of. I've looked to see if I've had any missing time. And she laughed at me, and with a tinge of "you're an idiot," and probably rightfully so. And she said, Dean, they don't have to knock on your door to get to you, which kind of humbled me. And I went, oh, okay. So maybe, because I believe in the muse. I've written so many screenplays and ideas come, and I have no idea where they're coming from. Yeah. So why not? Why not have there be, NHI muses out there who are, but yeah, so that's kind of, it's my desire to see this, like Spielberg. Spielberg hasn't seen a UFO. It's my desire to see it that keeps me going and working with people in that community who have. It's
just an irony that's the way it is. Stanton Friedman, as great a ufologist or student of the subject of all time, never had a sighting, nor did Timothy Good, now retired, but arguably England's greatest UFO researcher and investigator. When you worked with A&E and Bravo, can you give us an idea of the projects that you worked on with them or for them?
Yeah. A&E, I did a James Bond thing. This would have been after the second Pierce Brosnan movie. It was a series that I believe was called Movie Magic. And then the bulk of the stuff that I did a lot of was for like the Discovery Channel. I did 1 and 2 hour specials for them. Billy the Kid Unmasked, Jesse James, Terrorist Outlaw. And then I did what's his name? Dick Wolf, crime series called Arrest and Trial. And I did some episodic stuff. And so I'm kind of, all over the map there, but it was really fun doing these 1 and 2 hour documentaries, especially for Discovery. Those were great.
I would expect so. Dick Wolf is a figure who has my respect from the get-go. He is the creative spark, overseeing presence in every episode of Law and Order, of every permutation we have ever seen. Creator to the executive producer. As a filmmaker, and in this part of your work, kind of a journeyman, for me, it seems just kind of a gift that you get pulled into different worlds. And if it's a good documentary production, you can get lost in a reality that you weren't even aware was there. For me, Ken Burns is, our documentary god. He's just the master of the craft, and he has a new one out on the American Revolution right now. But I think how much I've learned from documentaries he's done on subjects I had no real interest in, but watched them because they were Ken Burns and enjoyed them thoroughly, and was a bit humbled by the fact that I now had a good deal more interest in them. Do you remember any subject completely non-paranormal? I believe they call it normal. That you worked on, funny word, that still sticks with you as kind of an example of that?
Well, it's funny. Westerns, I keep coming back to. I've done 3 Westerns, and it was weird because at the time as a kid, I wasn't that much into Westerns. Later on, I mean, I love Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The Unforgiven is the greatest Western I think of all time.
Oof.
So good. Shane, etc. But it wasn't until I went out on set and started filming and had horses and had, bad guys with guns and black hats that I really got excited and went, oh my God, this is primal. This is great. So those are always really fun. Doing crime shows, because these were based on real instances, it started to kind of wear me down because some of the cases were
brutal.
Some of them really, heinous. And, but I loved science docs whenever I would get a chance to work on science docs. And there were certain things that I wanted to do that I hadn't the support to do, or it just didn't end up being something that there was time to do, that I was able to fold into my documentaries and go, oh, I really want to see this, like animation. I've done so many crime reenactment shows, and it's the same stuff. Get me an actor who looks exactly like the person that we're doing the story about. Most likely they're not going to be able to act, because to find someone who looks like them and also act, that's a tall order.
Good luck.
So good luck. So I hooked up with some animators for these documentaries, world-class animators who their films have won Oscars. And I said, okay, look, I want to represent like the Rendlesham Forest case. I want to do the Tic Tac case beyond just seeing that little hash mark that I always joke looks like Pong, the game Pong. I want to see from inside the cockpit what it was like for Fravor. I want to see his windshield POV. And so we're able to do things that I haven't seen before. So that was really, really fun. That's what kind of kept me going, is to make these not just informative docs, but to do it in a way that is extremely cinematic, as much as I can do. And also, more importantly, to tell them from the other side of the spectrum, which isn't the human's perspective, but from the alien's perspective, even as a hypothetical. What would that look like? What does that open up?
I wanted to ask you about that because when I was reading the nomenclature for the new documentaries, trailers of which we'll be watching in the next hour, I was immediately kind of taken aback, because I realized, and I'm not new to the subject, and I thought, have I ever seen anybody whose theme here or operating idea was to look at things through the other end of the telescope, rather than us looking at them, information about them, they looking at us. It's such a simple transition, but I don't think I could think of anybody that's ever done that filmatically. What was it, do you remember, that kind of first spun that idea around in your head?
Well, if you're going to work in any genre, any type of story, the first thing you do is you look at other people who have done that. And I had started my documentary about the same time that I was working on Fox's. I came out for just a week and helped James Fox, on Phenomenon. And I had, even before then, I was a fan of a lot of documentaries that have been out there, but they were all, so what you usually do is, like, say if you're going to do a movie that's about, cops, and well, you kind of go, okay, you can tell the story from the cops' POV, but what if you told it from the perpetrator's POV? It's done tons, the movie Thief, Michael Mann has made a career out of that. So I thought, oh, well, what you do is you look at something and you go, okay, what's the opposite of that? And the opposite of, from the human's perspective, is the alien's perspective. So it's kind of right there. And I was more interested in that anyway. And my writing, my fictional writing, was about that, was leaning into their perspective of what's the motivation. And so that's what I really wanted to get to, like an FBI profiler who studies, perpetrators, what they're thinking, the machinacia of their thoughts. And so it really, it was really that, and was like, oh boy, how do I get there? Well, I don't pretend like I know what that is. but I find people like Dr. Michio Kaku,
Yes.
Dr. Nick Bostrom out of Oxford, and we say, hey, let's unpack this. What would that be like? What do you think? And then that just opened up so many great, ideas.
As you, I, others progress in our chosen routes in this and related areas, you're working at this point with historical, like crime cases, fictional characters, but at a certain point in your documentary work, especially your own, you shift gears and you start working with witnesses. And that is a very different experience, and requires kind of a somewhat adjusted set of tools, because these are real people, often who have been traumatized. In some cases, simply the fact that they are associated with having taken this public position, that they were involved in a particular incident or event, is not so much anymore, but was for many years cause for overt and covert ridicule. Some of these people have really suffered, and we owe it to them to present them as respectfully and as accurately as possible. Do you remember the first witnesses, military witnesses or civilian, that you worked with on any project, and how that was different for you than working on another commercial project with, again, fictional characters or historic characters?
Oh, it was palpable, Peter. Like boy, I'm like lacking the words to describe it when you say to someone, like I've done on all these crime shows, take me there, take me to that moment. And not just, take me to the particulars of the event, but I want to know what you're hearing. I want to know the temperature. I want to know if you're smelling anything. I want to know all of your senses. And the first one I believe that I had done in depth was Peniston, James Peniston, retired captain. I said to him,
retired sergeant, I think.
Sergeant, yeah. I said to those, captain at the time, maybe, when it happened. But I said to him, I said, take me back there. And he literally went like this. He just turned his head. And I thought, did he just go into a fugue state? I go, hey, Jim, you okay? And he goes, yeah, I'm there. And I go, good. And he says, no, I'm there. And I go, what do you mean? And he says, I can see the trees to my left. I can see the structure of the pine trees or the leaves. I can see what it looks. I can see the dew on a particular leaf. He said it is a photographic memory that he has. And he offered that there's no other memory in his life that he's ever had that has this much clarity, this much detail.
Yeah.
And so, we took a little moment because it was a little, overwhelming, but he went right there. And then we, got it on tape and him describing slushing through the forest where it felt like he was going through water that was, waist deep. The energy field, just insane. That really blew me away. And the thing that I've done when I've done all these crime shows is I really get into it because I feel like I need to be there seated next to them. And sometimes it affects me if I'm emotionally affected by what I'm hearing. I'll try to keep in check, but sometimes I can't. Sometimes I'm emotional as well, and I'm sitting there and I've cried before when I've heard some of these stories. And his was just, it was this, I just felt my heart went for this poor guy who's barely in his 20s, who was seeing this thing that should not exist. And it's haunted him since.
Yes.
And you'll see in the follow-up to the Alien Perspective and Life Beyond Earth, I put it in there where he is literally cussing out the forest. he is throwing down on it, saying that goddamn force. I mean, we're bleeping him left and right, but it's not an exciting thing, people, to see this stuff. And experiencers will tell you that while they feel honored to have been, chosen for some of these things, it's also not for the faint of heart. So I have massive, mad respect for anyone that's done that. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to have done that. I always use the analogy, when people go, oh, please, it's an alien. So you see that, whatever, and I go, okay, all right. You're sitting on your deck, you're reading a book. It's the middle of the day. It's noon. You look over to your left, and what do you see? A chimpanzee peeks around the corner, and the chimpanzee goes back around there. You get up and you go over, and it's gone. Tell me for the rest of your life, you are not jacked up. You are not questioning whether or not that happened, because it's out of context. That chimp should not be there in any version of reality.
No.
Now, switch it out with an alien at nighttime. Tell me, and they don't always come at night, but tell me that you are not even more jacked up. So that's what we're dealing with here.
In the world of UFO related fictional films, since we've been kids, there have been like a zillion films that have come out. Some of them huge budget, some of them very modest productions, some of them absolutely ludicrous and unintentionally hysterical, other ones simply brilliant. Besides Close Encounters of the Third Kind, can you give us a couple of UFO theme related films that you consider among the best, or that stay with you the longest?
Well, the one that's at the top of the peak that came out the year I was born was Santa Claus versus the Martians, I think it was. A classic, a true classic. Don't know if they did any research on the aliens or on Santa, for that matter. I would say, in order, I'm going to go with The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yes.
Phenomenal film. It was remade with Keanu Reeves. Love Keanu, but not that great. Needs to be redone, right? Yeah, that was great.
Leave it alone the way it is in the original.
Yeah. War of the Worlds, of course. And
the 1952 version, or the Steven Spielberg more recent version?
The OG version. I'm going to say, and then I'm going to go to The Interrupted Journey, the Barney and Benny Hill story, the TV movie with James Earl Jones.
Yes,
and Estelle Parsons. Yes. Holy crap! Yeah, still great.
I will take 20 seconds of our time and tell you that in about 1985, I had an opportunity to meet and spend 2 or 3 minutes with Mr. James Earl Jones. And that was the series of questions I asked him about playing Barney, and let him know that I was seriously involved in researching the subject. But he talked about listening to the tape recordings with Dr. Simon for the first time, and that yell that Barney lets out at that moment of complete helpless terror. It was a made-for-TV movie. I don't think it would have had much run in theaters because it was just too damn scary, even with the way that they had to deal with the little people, the beings. We're little people with masks on. We're used to more sophisticated effects now, but it doesn't matter. He and Estelle Parsons were mind-blowing in that film.
Yeah, that came out in 1975.
That's right.
And then 2 years later, 1977, December, you've got Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And then that knocked me on my ass because I was a big Star Wars fan. And I was kind of protective. I'm like, oh, what's this other sci-fi film? What the hell? Where does my allegiance go? But I'm finding Richard Dreyfuss's character as being someone who's, kind of like a prophet Jesus type character who goes off. It doesn't take him 10 years, but something is pulling him. It's a spiritual film without bad guys. That is an action adventure movie, sci-fi.
Odysseus as well, on a journey. And the ending was such a jaw dropper for so many of us. so poignant in so many ways, and the mantra of the X-Files, I want to believe. There's an aspect of what we
Yeah.
want to believe.
Yeah. So and then after that, again, E.T., which is funny because E.T. comes out in 1982, and within a month and a half, these are the films that came out at the same time. The Thing, another alien movie.
Heavy remake. Yeah.
Blade Runner.
Mm.
I mean, just like staggering. And there's like two more like that came out. And for some reason at the moment, I can't remember, but just, it was a hell of a year. And so from then on, I mean, at that point, it was like, how do I replicate this? How do I, get in this? And so that was that longing to experience more of that, is what, drove me. In fact, the last time I had COVID, about a year ago, I decided to do something crazy just as an exercise, and I wrote a sequel.
Whoa!
To Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I got to play in Spielberg's sandbox, and I don't know if it ever see the light of day, but it didn't matter. At the time, it was. I want to go back and visit these characters and what would happen, with Richard Dreyfuss and everything, and the family left behind, and it was just ripe and really had fun with that. But yeah, it was funny because I remember this denial of going, yeah, I kind of, I've done UFO stuff, but I'm not, I've done Westerns, I've done comedies, dramas. I've got a dark comedy coming out next year. I didn't think that I was that ensconced in it. And then I went back and I counted all the scripts and stuff that I'd done in the movies, and I realized, holy crap, more than a third of my IP is sci-fi alien, specifically alien content. Yeah. So something is, there's a tether going somewhere that's, tugging me along.
Do you think that there's an added element of excitement or anticipation or frustration or just a special kind of buzz to be doing the work that you're doing now, that the subject of UFOs, UAPs, and their implications for humanity have become so totally mainstream, as opposed to when it was considered an outsider subject when you started?
Well, that's all the credit of, Lou Elizondo, Leslie Kane, Ralph Blumenthal, Cooper. I forgot Helene Cooper.
Yeah.
Helene Cooper, and that coming out, and then the timing of that, you can be finicky, and you can say, well, that was the entire story that they gave. There was some other high strangeness, and it's like, okay, what's the point? Is the point to get people to legitimize this, or is it the point to get everything out and fire hose the public in the face with this? I would say it's one step at a time. Good for you that you can handle that and you can talk about, skinwalkers and this and that. But it's a fragile thing, as much as we still think, no, now it's all safe for everyone to be out and, no one's going to be rounded up. Wrong. It just takes one article. I mean, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, when they said, that, well, it doesn't look like these are beings from another. It's a house of cards. It constantly needs to be fortified. So, yeah.
Well said. We are coming into our last 5 minutes before the break. And again, when we come back, we're going to be focusing in on your documentaries. I want to know, it's kind of a cliched question, but there are, as we find out, many well-known people in the entertainment business industry who, some who have done films around the subject, some not, but who do take the subject seriously. Are there any that you've interfaced with, and anything you can share about that person or that point of view?
All right. So if you see The Age of Disclosure, which you should check out, I'm trying to remember if it's Hal Puthoff who said this. He said that Hollywood has been working with the government, that specifically, he said, let me see if I've got the quote up here. Let's see. He said, that, 1 second. Okay, here it is. Good. I can get an exact quote here because I always want to quote people exactly. He said that the CIA, this is actually Jay Stratton, who I hung out with at Phenomicon. He's getting wrong information. He says the CIA funded Hollywood movies to create that ridicule factor, that they still use to this day. All right. So I'm here to tell you that that's nonsense. No offense against Jay, but there is zero films that have been funded by the government. I wish this was true because I would be in line to get my grants, to get my funding, but it doesn't work that way. Sorry to say. Steven Spielberg's Close Encounter film came about because of J. Allen Hynek and because of probably reading about the Barney and Betty Hill story. He did his own research as well, but when he saw the name of the book, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Spielberg went, I got to have that. And then that luckily introduced him to, J. Allen Hynek. And then he brought him on as a consultant with, Jacques Vallée. No, that was not funded. Name me a movie that was funded. Arrival? No. E.T.? No. I'm trying to think of any other film. Some people talked about how Escape to Witch Mountain, that the government came out and kind of advised on this. Well, who funded that movie? It was Disney. They're not funding films, guys. Please. I get asked that all the time. And they say, is your film being funded? I'm like, oh man, I wish, because I have to claw and scrape like every other filmmaker making movies out there. Documentaries, I can't see them doing that either. But I'll tell you, Hollywood movies, as they are, none of those, we've asked their cooperation, time and time again. And if you're lucky, you can get to shoot on the bases, Air Force bases or Army bases. But no, absolutely not. First of all, the government, they're not very good at storytelling. So they're pretty bad. They're pretty scary, actually. So it's better left up to the artists and our imaginations. Also, it takes away credit from the people who actually make these things. It's like fiber optics. That was from from Roswell. And I say, okay, so it is true that it was not created, fiber optics, by one human. It was not a human. It was created by 3, maybe 4. And 2 of them won a Pulitzer or Nobel Prize for the technology. And so it takes away from human ingenuity to give credit to someone else. Yeah. So maybe there's other things that have come from that, but fiber optics, that hasn't come. And so, and I don't mean to be so pernicious or harsh, but I really want this stuff to be real. And the stuff that I do see that's real, I will point loud and clear. I will burn off flares and send up, smoke signals if it's real. And so, but I've got a pretty hard litmus test that I use.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that the idea of the word first kind of came into our lexicon about 20 odd years ago, back engineering, which is this coverall phrase for, we get it. Advanced craft from parts unknown goes down. We take it down to the hairpins, figure it out. And, we now have our first crack at their technology. I think it's important to remember, and it was kind of a mantra of Bud Hopkins too, that this sort of romantic leaning into they are here to help us and their technology will crack the code, as opposed to, could we have gotten from, the stand-up telephone and the transistor radio to where we are right now in the past 50 years on our own? There's nothing like human beings working together on a project that they are united on to be able to do something that's never been done before. And I think this romanticization of alien technology and all of the golden age that will open up if they would only pass it along to us is undermines what extraordinary creatures we are at our best, which we haven't seen quite as much of lately as I wish we are. But at the same time, as an old boss of mine used to say, with the mind can conceive, it can achieve. And on that note, we are through our first hour. Peter Robbins here with my special guest, Dean Alioto. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth, and we are back in 5. See you then.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. The Unex Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Kathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes, made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Unex Network website at unexnetwork.com. That's unexnetwork.com.
And welcome back. It's Peter Robbins with my special guest tonight, Dean Alioto, on the show Meanwhile Here on Earth. And I should say, when I came up with the name of the show 4 years ago, I ended up calling it Here on Earth, and then realized after the fact that there's a show on NPR called Life on Earth. Kind of disappointed with myself. Bounced the name off a friend named Travis Walton. Said, calling the show Here on Earth. He's quiet for a moment. He said, "You're missing a word." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Meanwhile." And that's how the show got its name. And you heard it here.
I love that. It gives it a little humor too. Some levity.
So at a certain point, you decided not just to undertake doing a UFO-related documentary and doing it from the other point of view, namely their point of view, to a great degree, rather than ours. Had at that time you had any idea you were about to set off on an 8-year, 4-country, at least 60 persons interviewed epic journey, or that you thought you were just going to make a documentary and maybe make another after that, kind of in the studio?
Well, it's really easy to step in the hubris dog pile. And I did that because I thought, like I said earlier, I thought I was going to, be done in 9 months, 15 interviews. and the problem is you can't scrape that stuff off. Now, The problem is that someone will say, like, we start out at NASA in the Alien Perspective documentary, the first one, and I'm asking her, what is the protocol? You're out there with the test. She's the chief deputy in charge of the TESS program, which is the precursor to the James Webb telescope and search for extraterrestrial life. And I said, so what happens when you find it? What happens if you find like a Dyson sphere around a sun, or you find a light grid? What happens then? What's the protocol? And she looked at me and she goes, and she starts giggling. And I go, what? And she goes, we don't have a protocol. And I said, wait, hold on. I got to get this straight. NASA does not have a protocol when they come across life on another planet. And she said, no. She goes, it's really funny because we spent all this time on the technology, but we don't have like an end game for this. And she's like, I guess you would go just because they do have a protocol, whether you like, SETI or not. And I get the grievances here, but they said they do have a protocol. So I'm now off to SETI. And so that's, Palo Alto. And so the office that I went to and went and drilled down on Seth Sostak and just, grilled him about it and held him to the fire. And it was a pretty good interview. And he was more loquacious when it came to talking about it at the time. Maybe they're looking for funding, who knows, around that time of the year. But they do have a protocol. And anyway, the point is that then I would go from there. Then it's like, okay, I got some of my answers, but I didn't get all my answers. So I need to continue going. And so I would meet with someone else and say, oh, you need to go and talk to this person. Or there's this thing called the simulated reality hypothesis that we might be created by the aliens and we're their simulation. Okay, who created that craziness? Dr. Nick Bostrom in Oxford. Now I'm, off to do an interview with Nick Bostrom. So it just went from one to the other, and ended up being actually 4 documentaries. And so we're seeing the first 2 right now. Those are the ones that I dropped. And then there's 2 more coming out, one probably early next year. But it ballooned. It got bigger and bigger. And I just kept trying to hold on to it. And, I would force it and go, okay, no, this is it. And then I would look at the editing and go, I can't cram this all into one, documentary. This is... underserves it. So it ended up being open. And so that's kind of how this went. I feel like I'm being dragged along literally, Peter. It's
when you started on the first one, did you think you were going to be able to say everything you wanted to or express this project in one? Or did you already know that you had a second, third, and more in the pipe coming?
So I would say my goal, the ultimate goal, the main tip of my spear was that I had to serve 2 masters on this. I had to serve the UFO community, who I love and have felt a warm acceptance for almost a decade now, since I've been hardcore into this. I've always been kind of, armchair, not even an expert, armchair prosumer before then. And so I really felt like I needed to give them mic drops with every documentary and show them things they haven't seen before. And we were able to do that. But I also, more importantly, wanted to get out to the people that were kind of, as I joke, UFO bi-curious. Who are like, is there anything to that? Mostly my friends that would go, really, Dean, this is what you're doing? I'd say, hey, take a look. And I could lead them in, slowly into the rabbit hole and not just, waterboard them, in the well. And so that was the real challenge, was to serve those 2 masters. And so far the reactions have been strong at both ends. So we seem to be succeeding so far.
Race, if you are there, how about we play the first trailer right now?
Was unlike anything I'd ever seen before.
Everything started out normally. He seemed upset and started pointing Concord Rendlesham Forest.
We just looked at each other for a minute and looked back up at the sky.
There was no sound at all.
Multiple witnesses, military personnel.
My emotions were all over the place. Scared to in awe.
Most science documentaries look at an encounter with extraterrestrial civilization from our point of view. But let's turn it upside down.
Simply the hypothesis that we live in a computer simulation.
The question comes up, who created the simulation?
It was observing us. It was communicating. My questions are, where'd it come from?
Could they maybe be us in the future?
We cannot assume that they're just 100 years more advanced than us.
If aliens are intelligent, they're also curious.
Here we are, we come in peace.
The front page of the New York Times, it was a big deal.
I don't know whether there are other countries that would like to get their hands on this.
What are the next steps that NASA is going to do? What are the next steps that the community is going to do?
This is stuff that belongs to humanity.
I would pluck down $3.99 to see that. That's just me. But, or you could buy it, watch it.
Very powerful. Very powerful. Tell us a bit about what we should expect when we see this first documentary.
You should expect to get into this from a very, very grounded point of view. It's kind of like a rocket launching. Everything is set there. Everyone's strapped in so you can go to the heights that it needs to take us to, because the phenomenon has great heights. And so what you're going to see is we're going to take it from the usual prosaic, are they from another planet? We're going to look at that in ways that you haven't looked at before. And then we're going to look at other possibilities. Like I mentioned before, are they from, the simulation reality? Are they from another dimension? Are they from the future? Which I kind of happen to be a more and more a proponent of. It's like, as I was making these, I started out going, they're from another planet. That just makes sense. And then it was, Jacques Vallée's, because I've read Dimensions and so much of his material. And then the simulation was kind of interesting, but I kind of leaned towards that. But the thing is that it's not one. It could be all of the above. So we have to factor in everything. And so you're going to hit that in the first one. You're going to follow all that up. And we also have some material that we were able to get our hands on that we do a breakdown of, and we'll do a study that gets followed up in the follow-up film, Life Beyond Earth.
The idea that these other intelligences, and for me, that may be a myriad of intelligences, who are the ones who are interfacing with human beings as opposed to the ones who are not, abducting and returning human beings, that kind of thing. Do you have an intuition that you've kind of come to deductively or intuitively about what you feel or you sense they're here, what they're here about, their relationship regarding us, or just something that, you're open to different points of view, but don't have a particular one that you adhere to?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. I would say that I kind of look at the evidence, as an ad hoc detective from working on 20 years on these crime shows.
Yep.
I would say that the evidence points to them engage in some genetic campaign, if we're talking about the experiencers. And and that's been going on for a long time. And from what I hear, it's still going on. It's got to be something that is servicing them, not just us. And so, boy, there's so much to, backstory here. You can talk about the Anunnaki, and I go, okay, well, let's talk about that, because it's a great mythology. The Anunnaki, they came and created us. And I'm like, well, they didn't finish us, because they still have some refinement to do. I'm thinking one of those things, it would be great to kind of breed out. And we do it with cats and dogs.
Yes.
We do breeding certain traits. Why can't we do this with, another species, where you say, okay, they're going to be less greedy, and, they're going to spend less time, purchasing yachts, just so they can show other people that, look, I have something that you don't have. When they, not to get too heavy into this, but I feel like that if they were able to do that, that would be something that we need to get rid of, so that we stop warring and everything. Because mankind, despite what we see in the news, isn't warring only. Just go to a concert, man. You go to a concert, or you go to the gallery and you look at art, and you look at the people there appreciating other people at their best.
Yes.
And so it is there, and it is the majority. I've shot in 33 states. I don't know how many countries. And the bulk of my experiences are always with wonderful, warm people. It's just the controlling minority, great minority, is where we kind of stub our toes all through history, regardless of what side you're on the political fence, both sides.
I think sometimes, not always very seriously, that we are somebody's doctoral or graduate experiment that has gone wrong, and they have come back to see if they can get a better grade. Stanton Friedman theorized that in lighter moments, that the Earth is essentially where bad aliens are sent so they can know how good it was on their planet until they're allowed back.
Right.
It really is an insane asylum. And
I think John Mack would have endorsed that too.
At the same time, I laugh to myself, because we all have certain beliefs that we gravitate toward, we hold on to, we defend, we champion, or we reject. And reality doesn't care what we believe.
Yeah. That's it.
No matter how codified or how many supporters it has.
No, it's John Lennon, and I don't think it was his original quote, but it's, life is what happens when you're busy making plans.
That's exactly.
It's so
waiting for
funny.
your dreams to come true.
Yeah, it's so funny, because here's the thing. People who have seen UFOs, good on them. They're getting to see teasers, maybe a trailer, not the final trailer before the movie comes out, just the teasers and the trailer to some great, fantastic movie. But we are not mature enough. It's like when you're a kid in nursery school and you see a trailer, a teaser, it's always, for, general, public viewing, general audience. And so that's what we're getting. But we have such a ways to go down the road in order to get to anything where we can be at their level, we can be at their understanding. Yeah. I mean, it's impatience. It's typical. This is how we are, especially Americans, very, very impatient. Yeah. And I'm split right down the middle, really, with regards to these visitors. And it encompasses several different kinds. And the whole point of our spiritual journey. I'm a believer in the tenets of Buddhism and other religions. I'm very agnostic when it comes to which one to park it, but I feel like I do believe in reincarnation, xenoglossy, which is the ability for a child who's born at a young age to speak another language. Yes, or play the piano, which they shouldn't be able to. You're born with that. That's residual from a past life. The James Latiker story, fantastic story. World War II pilot. He remembers everything as a kid. And so I think that, for lack of a better definition, I think that the Earth is one big school. Yeah. And the debate is where we are at. And right now I can tell you that if we're lucky, we're in kindergarten.
Yeah.
No one here has a PhD on this. Maybe some, monks up in, the Himalayas do have an insight through their third eye or whatever. But the general population, we don't. We're still doing dumb things. As an example, do you know how much money that we spent from 1946 to the 90s, late 80s? Do you know how much money that we spent fighting the Cold War? Over $1 trillion. So that much money, because and did it result? Did it handicap? Well, they look back, the Monday morning quarterback, and they look back and they go, no, except for 13 days in October where Kennedy went toe to toe with the Russians. It didn't. It really didn't. It could have, not that we need to be asleep at the wheel, but we already had that infrastructure in there and we fortified it. Great. But we didn't need to spend over $1 trillion. And we're still spending that. $1 trillion, just to let you know, would have been able to pay for everything that everyone owns, not the land, but everything that everyone owns, all the clothing, all the problems. This is not to give you an idea of what we put our focus on. And I'm not a Pollyanna. I know that we need to have, strong military, et cetera. This has nothing to do with that. So if we can do that, why don't we set it up so that we have people where they're not poor? You're not struggling to feed your kid universally around the world. We are capable of doing so many things. And just to go back to what you said earlier about, you look at the progress that we're able to make. Well, our greatest progress that we've made right now, as far as technology wise, I'm not going to talk about AI, set that aside.
Yeah.
It's going to the moon. And the reason why we went there, the only reason was competition, fear of the Russians. We got there. Now, what would have happened if they got there and they put their flag there, the Russians? We still would have gone up and everything. It wouldn't change anything. Has it changed anything that we've got a flag there that got knocked over when the landing capsule took off? No. So it's just kind of the value of things that I find, mankind. So getting back to my point, sorry, I went off on a tangent, is that I feel like ultimately we are still so young, and these beings, these NHIs, they have survived their own nuclear holocaust. If they went through that, if their makeup was like ours, they transcended, they matured out of it. So if I look at our planet and I look at it as a schoolyard that we keep coming back and reincarnating, we get better and better and better, and we can see it through time, then I feel like, all right, let's just be patient. The movie's going to come, but we're not going to be able to join any Galactic Federation. I doubt the bouncer at the Galactic Federation dance club is going to even let you stand in line at this point.
Shall we go on to the trailer to part 2, which has a very different feel to it, reflecting a different way of thinking and presenting. I'm equally intrigued by the second one, and already looking forward to seeing them both. But ready to go with number 2?
Let's do it.
Mr. Hobbs.
The Vatican has been studying extraterrestrials for a long time. There are usually a few reasons why non-human intelligence would want to interact with human intelligence.
They may be just as curious as we would be about them. They may just be the ultimate intellectual, that they are so curious about who we are that they may even tamper with where we're going.
People are calling this reception of information from non-human intelligence today a download.
Maybe eventually we're going to need to upgrade our minds regularly in order to keep up with the pace of technology.
Alien scientists have the same commitment to coming here and studying the anthill that is us.
Americans would never be in an asymmetric war unless we were invaded by aliens. We need to think about that. Why are they coming here?
was contacted to take a look at the material and try to see what I can tell about the origin of the sample.
I think it's going to be shocking for a lot of people.
Wow. Dr. Diane Pascula is a religious scholar who, of course, has worked extensively with our friend Chris and his family on their kind of ongoing family narrative. But one thing that more piqued my curiosity, where the world of popular culture and serious studies in the UFO UAP subject kind of come together, is seeing that the actor comedian, and very good he is, Dave Foley, is involved in this project. Many people know him from his younger days as one of the stars of the great Canadian rep company, The Kids in the Hall. How did you kind of come across him, or he you, and work together? And what pulled him away, if you know, from a career in strictly entertainment business to work in a serious documentary like this?
Well, we were on the mothership smoking a couple cigarettes, and I said, "Hey, dude, I think you've got something to say here. Why don't you come back with me?" And no, he was already posting about it before I got to him. He had just started though. I think I connected through him with Deep Prasad, had connected with him on Twitter. And then it was kind of like we were both mutually interested. I had reached out to Dave first. I think I was the one who made the first move there. And I said, "Hey, I hear that you're talking about this and I like what you're saying. You seem very grounded and you've got some interesting perspectives on that. And that's what I'm all about." So reached out to him and he blew me away. I mean, Dave is deceivingly, intellectually voluminous. He's got great insights. He looks at things terrific. There's a section in the new documentary, Life Beyond Earth, where I cut back and forth between Dr. Michio Kaku, who says, you know, what would beings that would be so advanced think of us? It might be like we're ants. And wouldn't they have an inclination to step on us? I don't think that they would bother with us. And then I cut to, Dave Foley, and he says, "Yeah, they're called entomologists, and we do study ants. Thank you very much." And so, he's able to look at anything. I love calling Dave and saying, "Hey, here's this simulation reality, or here's this and that," and then we'll stab at it from different angles. But yeah, he's terrific.
I'll be particularly curious because his comedy was always very intelligent. He funneled his intelligence into making people laugh, and it will be very interesting for me to follow up on this as well. The idea, the concept, the movement toward disclosure with a capital D. Some people visualize that it will be an actual event or series of events in the future when world leaders coordinate, informing their people at pretty much the same time that we're not alone and we enter this new age with that formality, or that that's a hypothetical that may or may not happen, but the process of disclosure is continuing every day. 1, 7, 19, 3 people at a time that now take the subject extremely seriously and are educating themselves and going through that door of change to be prepared for, disclosure with a capital D. I have been a proponent of the natural process, so to say, but I think there are a good number of our friends, colleagues, and folks in the work who are not really concerned with how ready other people are for this, because they're ready. And there's a certain antsiness, for a lot of us that have been involved in this subject for years, if not decades, of, okay, enough already. I am ready. I know. I've, seen the evidence, and welcome the Space Brothers, or, come on down and, see my shotgun. But one way or the other, you're real, I'm ready. I think most people in the world are not. And they're living their lives, doing their best to pay the bills and raise the kids and hope that there's Social Security by the time they need it and all that other stuff. But at the same time, how could there be an official disclosure announcement without implying a lot of things that people are really not ready for, like the stuff that comes along with the general idea of we're not alone and we're interacting, or another intelligence is interacting with us. Pesky themes like missing pregnancies and hybrids and abductions. Any thoughts at all on the most thoughtful, intelligent, pragmatic way humanity can move forward in this process?
Yeah, it's funny that the word disclosure happens to be the word. If you look at it, the first, 4 letters are disc. It's literally disc, like a flying disc. Here's the thing.
Disclosure.
Yeah, here's the thing. Oh man, there's so many different ways to attack this. Okay. The next documentary that I have coming out is all about experiencers.
Good.
Is the public ready to hear that people are being abducted and continue to be abducted? When I go to UFO conventions, everyone there, yes, absolutely. I always say, if the aliens had come down and said, hey, here's the thing, we're working on this project, it's going to benefit you, it's going to benefit us, we need volunteers. How many people do you think would line up for that? I'm guessing I might be one of them. I don't know. The older I get, the less I want to bother with, doing medical stuff. But there would probably be a lot of people who would say, yeah, people who do testing on new, medical drugs, research. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing it would be a pretty long line, maybe spanning a couple states, of people on the planet who would be open to that. So do you really need to get, people? John Mack talks about a lot of these people who have been abducted, he believes, dual identity theory, which is basically that these are the people who are being abducted are from another planet that they came from, or space, wherever they came from, and they've agreed to do this. They don't have memory of this, but they've agreed that I'm going to be a part of whatever this program is. So I have to separate in my brain the experiencers from disclosure, because for me, I feel, again, everything's got to be done in stages, folks. It's always been that way. Advancements are always done. And right now, we've skipped ahead way too many steps. Moore's Law, which was this gradual thing with the integrated circuit, showed up. It's now off the charts. AI, it's a harbinger, man. There's no way to get around that of things that aren't great, unless we've got people in charge who say, okay, there's now blue collar jobs we're not going to need to do anymore, but lawyers, their jobs, which was a sure way to have a nice career, that's going to be wiped out. And so in part, and so I look at this and I go, give us the footage that you have. I want to see the clean footage. I'm just speaking for myself, but I don't think so. I want to see the clean footage that you have, that I know that the military has. I want to see that stuff. That would be great. Before AI is so prevalent that, because right now everything is suspect. I'm on Facebook. I'm constantly getting people sending me stuff, and I'm like, fake. I can tell. Yeah. Or it's just too far away. I can't see it. They've got the good stuff. So I want to see that. If they've got craft, how do you say to the DOD or Department of Energy, the legacy program, how do you say to them, just give us the tailpipe of the craft, nothing else. Just let us see that. We want more and more and more. right? That's how we are as an audience. And as a people. So where does disclosure end? No one is talking about that I've heard. No one is saying there's part one of disclosure. Part one is going to be here are all the video, here's all the pictures that we have, and here's some samples of material. But if that material can be utilized to create any technology, then that puts us or anyone at a superiority level. We're not going to get it. So what is the disclosure? I'm kind of throwing that back at you, Peter. What do you think the disclosure is that people want that's realistic?
I think first thing that people want to be reassured that these other intelligences are not the worst kind of science fiction fantasies of their worst dreams. They want to know that they're not bad and they're not evil. And we have so many wonderful models for bad and evil aliens. I think again, attached to that great X-Files mantra, I want to believe, there's, and Carl Jung talked about it in so many words, as a modern myth of a new pantheon of gods to help us out of the mess that we have created for ourselves here on Earth, that there's something noble about them, something that they would, the highest part of ourselves in being good people and helping other people, we want to ascribe to the best of them because we don't seem capable of getting ourselves out of our own problems. Or at worst, that if behind the scenes, they are moving all the chess pieces, pulling all the strings, indirectly controlling world events through, the wealthiest people, most powerful people, that most of us are moving along with the illusion of free will and liberty to the degree that our governments allow us, and having our dreams and falling in love and working on projects and fighting for what we believe in, even if under this dome of control. You remember the miniseries V from the 80s that was remade a couple of years ago in a bigger and more boring version. I thought it quickly kind of deteriorated into every World War II resistance movie I'd ever seen. But the opening, the premise, and I've talked about this on other shows, the opening sequence basically is among the greatest, for me, science fiction moments, right up there with H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, our modern pantheon of 20th century science fiction writers. One morning, everybody in the world wakes up and learns that hanging 1 mile up over the 60 biggest cities in the world is a giant hunkin' mothership a mile across. Game over. It's all downhill from there. But that basically would put everything in order very quickly as far as deniability and disclosure. One of the things that you had said, if they're as advanced as they're probably curious and they're certainly intelligent. The great Margaret Mead, one of our most famous anthropologists, was asked in the 1960s what she thought of the idea of aliens. And being a smart woman, a good anthropologist, her response was essentially, I can't think like an alien. But as an anthropologist, if I was able to observe them, that's all I'd be doing. I would watch and take notes and make films like I would if you parted the rushes somewhere in the Amazon and there's a pre-Stone Age tribe untouched, working away. And then you discover gold or oil and all bets are off.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, and we can pinpoint it, once crude oil, fossil fuel, became the thing, unlike any other technology, like fire, not to any degree, you can, monetize that and make it a currency like you can with fossil fuels. So at that point, we retarded ourselves, literally, and we've not moved past that. And so, when I think of, because I'll ask people this at conventions and festivals, I'll say, so what do you want? from like, and they'll say, we want technology from the aliens. And I go, okay, so let's look at that for a second. I'm a parent. So they want the technology to clean up our planet. And I said, as a parent, I'm thinking that sounds suspiciously like, all right, kids, get out of the room. Mom and dad, we're going to clean up your room. No, we're going to just dirty it up again. We need to figure this out. We need to make it a priority. Again, if we took that $1 trillion that we spent, even half of that, and because we thought that the Cold War was real and an immediate threat, and we were going to at any moment be nuked. And the Russians thought the same thing. And that's why we had that, deterrent where it's equal, threat. And so if we had taken that and we moved it into helping the climate and helping the planet, we wouldn't be in this mess. So we have the answers. So I don't want them to give us something that we could figure out ourselves. Thank you very much. I want them to give us stuff that we don't know that would help us. But again, aren't we robbing ourselves of the journey of discovery? And the thing that links us to these beings, all beings of any form of intelligence level, it's curiosity.
Yes.
And so it's like if I say to you as a filmmaker, forget the first and second act. I'm just going to show you the third act. I'm just going to show you the climax of the story. Here you go. 5 minutes out the door. Have some popcorn. It's going to be extremely not only unsatisfying, but it's also going to not shape us in any way, evolution-wise, maturity-wise. We don't have the maturity IQ yet to deal with such technology, and we pervert every technology into a weapon anyway. Yeah. So it's probably better that we don't have the ability to readily available, and we haven't made it available at Home Depot, anti-gravity packs, so that we're not, taking people we don't like and sending them off the planet, or whole nations off the planet. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it sucks, but.
Stanton Friedman, who made a lot of, I think, accurate and profound observations about the UFO phenomenon related thinking, put forward that for him, what the real prize was for governments, beyond any of our more noble ideas of working together, creating a world that isn't preoccupied with human beings murder other human beings, but that the real prize was the technology, and in specific the military technology. Whoever can crack the code on major New World and basis for weaponry wins, and wins big. So governments,
who gets that technology, and are they going to be benevolent? And how long are they going to be benevolent? What happens if another regime comes in? It's like, no. We want to start, colonializing a whole bunch of other nations, and we're going to be ruled by one. It's kind of like Chekhov's gun. You show it in the first act, you're going to use it in the third act, my friend. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. No question about it. And the fact that we're not at that third act yet, but we know that there is a gun. Again, there's nothing noble about just wanting to be the strongest kid on the block, and to have that power backed up by absolute fear of obliteration. It's as though we're very much where we are 7,000 years ago in drawing a line in the dirt and having it understood that that side of the dirt is yours, this side is mine. And if you cross to my side, I can club you to death with this giant big stick that I have, because you cross that line onto my side. And we're pretty much still there with bigger sticks that hit harder. It's a nice romantic thought to think that we can be saved from ourselves by them, or even if there's a matter of implied threat, like is given in The Day the Earth Stood Still. Behave yourselves, or these wonderful robots that we've created to keep ourselves in order, will turn your planet into, one of the wonderful words of Plato, a burned out cinder or something like that. That is a little depressing for an Earthling to hear.
Yeah, and it's also a bummer that every 10 years we wipe out over 1 million species. Species that have nothing to do with our human foibles and wars, and it's disheartening. And that responsibility we are not carrying well. And so,
you just said
breaks
it.
my heart.
We are the shepherds of our host here, our planet, and we have been terrible shepherds. We are, in fact, the pathology. We are this planet's worst enemy. And until and unless we can reverse our behavior and focus more on life than death, we have a huge problem and challenge ahead of ourselves that I don't think we can or should look to them to be solving. And that has become very much a part of modern mythology and a part of the world of the greater number of people who have been drawn into the sphere of serious UFO studies, which 10 years was an outsider, conspiracy-oriented subject, and now is about as mainstream as mom and apple pie.
Yeah, it's weird. Again, it's easier for me to associate our development and where we're heading in a narrative storyline. And you look to the past to see what the future is going to be and how you're going to repeat it. Yeah. So mankind traditionally has been up 2 rungs, down 1, up 3, down 4 sometimes. And so it seems very pragmatic and simple that, if someone is hurting on the planet, that means that we're hurting. But that doesn't compute. And so and again, we are animals that are struggling to breed out of us qualities, evolve out of us qualities that are no longer helpful. And I'm always amazed at how we still have these things, these traits that we don't need anymore. And so I keep going, when are we going to get to that point where, because free will is key. Got to have free will. And if we don't have that, then, we're just lucky that no big brother has come along and wiped us out. And, and, a version of that is they come along and they say, this planet is awesome. You humans, not so much. We're going to keep the animals. We're going to, introduce a pathogen that's going to literally wipe you guys out. We'll sweep up your clothes because the pathogen will completely implode your whole physicality. But, we're susceptible to that. And, if anything, superior beings are demonstrating great patience with us. I would think. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Boy. Gosh, this is such a subject that loops you in your thinking. Do you feel that the fact that this youngest generation, let's say now, is anywhere from elementary school into junior high school, growing up in a digital world informed by a tremendous amount of imagery, ideas, stories, advertisements involving UFOs, unidentified aerial phenomena, different types of aliens, is going to result in that generation being the first to fully grow up almost blasé about anything that's controversial about the idea of otherworldly visitations, and looking back on past generations as naive in the extreme or completely unable to grasp the most important story of their time, or that that they will move forward more actively in this, or any thoughts on those up and comers, so to say?
I think we have reached the zenith of the acceptance of UFOs and aliens right now. I think we're close, very close to the zenith, because we have the government that has come out and said, yes, these things are happening.
Yeah.
And even to the point of saying, that some of the witnesses have said, recovered bodies and craft. We've reached that point. Then again, the next point, they're not going to bring out alien bodies. I just don't see them ever doing that. I mean, honestly, let's do a gut check, folks. I could be wrong, totally. Everything I'm saying could be wrong. But do we really see them taking out the bodies and laying them down and saying, we have, here we are here. So the fact that government has said, yes, they've been flying for decades with impunity in our airspace, and there's nothing we can do about their hair. I think it's already, my generation, and I'm like the last, I'm like the Gen X, right? Just the beginning of Gen X, I would say. We're already there. It just made sense. And statistic wise and everything else, it makes sense. And so I feel like, if I'm at a movie theater and I say, if someone raise your hand if you've seen a UFO, chances are someone has seen something. I mean, so many people have experienced these things. So I don't see they're going to be more acceptance, and all the polls say this right now. We're at an all-time high. I don't see that. If you're talking about experiencers, which I'm really moving into heavily, that to me is it's like, I don't care about the nuts and bolts anymore. I really don't. Yes, they're in the sky. My mother saw a UFO. I have a buddy of mine, a fellow documentary filmmaker, who used to give me crap about this. And then he had his own sighting, and he called me after a month, just like, dude, I think I need therapy. This has really jacked me up. And I'm like, welcome to our world, guy. The experiencers and what's going on there, that I don't ever see coming out. I don't know how you do damage control on that. No one has put forth a program in which to do that. Forget about absolving people and saying, hey, in the past days, and you give them, diplomatic immunity. It's not going to happen. This is next level. There is something going on that is a procedure with our body's DNA, however you want to break it down, that is a mutual thing. It seems to be. And whether it's on a scale or not, that to me is, God, that rocks my world. And it will. And can the general public handle that? Absolutely not. And what do we do with that? We can't stop this thing that's happening. Again, my solution would be that we have volunteers who openly say, I'll volunteer for that. But that's not going to happen. There's a deeper connection going on with these experiencers. There is something, there's a reason why they're chosen. That doesn't seem to be completely happenstance. However, there are friends of mine who are experiencers where, like, if we hang out a lot and everything and do this, you may start to, for lack of a better word, it's like you'll get an airborne alien abduction virus, from them, where it might happen to you. I have not experimented with this to see if this is a truism. I don't want that to be an axiom that I've got to now fold into my life. But again, just to summarize that, I feel like whatever is going on with the experiencers is more profound than anything, and I think it's asking too much of people to be able to do that. And if they could, again, dude, if they could, they would land on the White House lawn if they don't get shot down, and they would come and they would speak to us. But here's the thing: they don't, from all accounts that I've heard, they don't talk. It's all done telepathically. So you have someone who's standing there we're going to trust that they're going to be interpreting the telepathy signals and messages that they're getting to say, okay, Zignert here just said that you guys are doing this, you need to. So that doesn't really work. So they're going to go on a whistle stop tour like Teddy Roosevelt did and go along, all the stop offs. And how wide does that mental telepathy reach? And so is it going to be you stop and then you hit everyone? But more importantly, at the end of the day, Yogananda, the great yogi, Yogananda, he comes very early in the 20th century. He comes to America and he is exalted, he's appreciated, and he's a beautiful specimen of a man, long hair and everything, spiritual, and everything's going great. Then at some point, I think there was a jealousy with some married wife or the husband of whatever happened. All of a sudden, his pedestal that he was on got knocked, and he hightailed it back to India. And so we do that. We take these things, and it could be that then we turn them to demons. Luis Elizondo says all the time that, he was told, you do know they're demons, right? And then he's got other people saying, you're doing God's work. And so we have to get our story straight before we can have someone walk into the room that we're not going to pat on the back and maybe stab in the back.
Yeah.
Boy, that sounds really cynical. I'm sorry. Look, I got my mug, my coffee mug going.
It's a subject that really challenges us on every level, really. And we need the freedom to be able to think or postulate the wildest things imaginable. Without that freedom, we may never come to fully wrap our heads around this wider phenomena. Dean, a number of people have put forward over the years that they feel there are direct connections between individuals who have developed or were born with strong psychic powers, or feel that reincarnation is as real as a point in physics, or telekinesis and other paranormal behaviors are real and mastered, and that they are all related somehow, directly or indirectly, to UFOs, UAPs, experiences, or the abduction phenomena. Do you share that idea? Do you see these things as separate and sometimes crossing over into each other's boundaries?
Well, it lands squarely in the high strangeness category. Talking to Deb Jordan Cobble, she will tell you that after she's taken, she has psychic abilities. She can read people's thoughts for like a week or two. So there's this residual effect, but it's interesting. You go, okay, so it's a residual thing. So you're only able to have that part of your brain activated when you're with them, and then it slowly fades. How do you sustain that to the level that you can literally, look at someone and communicate with them? And so I think that's all a component of that. I mean, it's funny. I'm just going to throw something out there. I just finished Chuck Yeager's autobiography, and one of the most amazing pilots in the history of pilots. And during World War II, this cat was able to see planes, the enemy air fighters, that were coming miles in advance, like sometimes minutes in advance, before his platoon flying along, his squad rather, they could see it.
Wow.
And I just started thinking, this happened throughout his whole career. And I started thinking, was he able to do a little bit of astral projection and project out his view and to see this? Because people were like, how do you do it? Like, they doubted him. And he would say, he's constantly telling them, trust me, we need to circle around and we can hit them from the side. I mean, there are certain things that people have abilities that they're born with, whether it's, to help them in such a situation or not. I think it's all related, absolutely related. I'm excited that we'll be able to do that because, if you know what someone's thinking, you kind of have to regulate your thoughts about people and not just be so, critical.
And that's a great thought to tie it up with. Dean, we are out of time. This has been a great conversation, and you have given me more to think about than I had when we began. Dean Alioto, is there a website that our viewers can go to and learn more about you and your current projects?
Absolutely. It's called alienperspectivemovie.com. alienperspectivemovie.com, and that will have links to both of the films that they can go and rent and buy, and also a little bio of what's going on.
My friend, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure, and I'll look forward to our paths crossing again in corporeal, three-dimensional reality sometime next year.
Thank you, brother. You too. Have a great holiday.
You too, very much so. Stay well, friends. Fight for what you believe in, and we'll see you next week.